mentoring along with two other members, Jim Alexis and John Gamlin. You can see them as a result of my own experience relocating to the UK from India, recently widowed and with two very young daughters, trying to adjust to a completely new life in a new country. Although I made a success of that transition, it was far from easy, and I could have done with a mentor or two. That is when I recognized the need for mentoring and for the support networks that can provide through the work that we now do. I'm sure you all will agree, life is easier when we have a helping hand, whoever we are and whatever our circumstances. We use mentoring as an intervention tool to support individuals in the areas of education, employment, health, and community cohesion, and deliver various mentoring activities and events and conferences such as this. Provide training for individuals such as topics such as mentoring, career and professional development, confidence building, to name a few. It's been an overwhelming experience for TMR since the beginning of the first wave of pandemic. We had nearly 200 international students who approached us for help, in addition to many self-referrals. Self-referrals are still pouring in, as well as from other organizations. All right, one second, let me just check if I'm connected. So, sorry. As you can see on the screen, the services that we have been providing before the pandemic and how they have been impacted now, we all have gone virtual and some activities had to be canceled. Mentoring was always face-to-face with a dedicated mentor and have a more meaningful connection to develop. However, the restrictions meant that mentees and mentors cannot or could not meet in person. That's how it looks now when they cannot meet in person. Now, how COVID-19 impacted our beneficiaries? The mentoring had collected the data, and at the end of last month, this is how it looked. Since the pandemic, we have been experiencing a remarkable increase in the referrals with the areas concerning around loneliness, unemployment, and bereavement. We've also given special attention to those with dementia. Our volunteers who visited homes of individuals with dementia helped by putting up signs in the kitchen, like, for example, to wash their hands, and signs by the front door so that they remember not to leave their homes during lockdown. I take this opportunity to thank our volunteers for their continuous support to our beneficiaries, and also our beneficiaries who adapted to the change in our services. Most of the beneficiaries are vulnerable, and I would like to thank them, especially what they're going through. If you're passionate about our work and would like to contribute, please get in touch with us. Our contact details were just shared before, and we know that the pandemic had affected all of us physically and mentally, but it is still an evolving situation. It's amazing to see how the scientific community is working collaboratively to accelerate the generation of new knowledge about coronavirus and explain the global scientific process to educate the public. So our first and special guest is Dr. ALN Rao, all the way from California. Dr. Rao is a professor of virology in the Department of Microbiology and Plant Pathology at the University of California in Riverside. After getting his graduation and post-graduation from India, he got his PhD from University in South Australia. He's been teaching virology to undergraduate and graduate students for over 30 years. Today, he's going to talk about viruses. The title of the seminar is here. I think it will be. So, Dr. Rao, we appreciate your time to share your knowledge today. It must be very early, I know, as we already said, early on a Saturday morning in California now. Over to you, Dr. Rao.
All right, thank you. And good morning to all the viewers in the United States. And good evening to those in the UK and India. Okay. First, I would like to thank Sujatha Thaladi and the mentoring for giving me the opportunity to speak you here. And also, it's encouraging and very exciting to hear about the mentoring. And despite the pandemic and the lockdown, the mentoring is doing a fantastic job and found ways to help and bring the community together. So it's my honor to talk to you about viruses. So what I did in today's my talk is I compiled slides for those individuals that have either heard or limited knowledge about viruses. So I'm going to use very few technical terms so that a layman can understand about viruses. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, let's see. All right. So I got to share the screen first, actually. So let me share the screen here. Okay, share screen. There you go. Share. Good. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Good.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's get started with, first of all, I know everybody heard the term virus, especially after the COVID. Everybody knows what virus. But the question is to start with, what exactly the meaning of a virus? Okay, you'll be surprised to know in Latin, it means poison. That's what they actually, the name was coined. Okay, and then let me give you a few facts about viruses in general. Okay? Well, how old are viruses? So I would appreciate if you guys can mute your microphone so that it won't disturb the other people, please. Okay, how old are viruses? Okay, viruses existed 3.5 billion years even before humans evolved. So it's very interesting to know that fact. And they are considered neither dead or alive. So viruses are never going to die. Okay. And then what is the oldest virus in the world? It's going to be hepatitis B. Okay. And hepta means liver, because as most of you know that hepatitis causes disease in liver. And then when was the first virus discovered? So it was in 1898. So Bejering, he was the first scientist who actually used the word virus to identify a mosaic disease caused on tobacco. As you can see here in the image, this is how the mosaic of tobacco looks like. Okay, so in 1899, he coined the word virus, that means poison. What he did is he took the sap from these infected leaves and he rubbed onto the healthy plant, and he found that the healthy plant developed the same symptoms. So that's why then he named it as tobacco mosaic virus. And in fact, he called it as a contagium vivum fluidum. That means it's a poisonous liquid. Okay, and as of today, about more than 5,000 viruses have been described or identified that are infecting plants, animals, humans, insects, and bacteria, etc. And you'll be surprised to know even they found viruses in geysers, where you find in Yellowstone National Park in the United States and in Japan, where the temperatures are going to be over 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Even viruses live in that kind of environment. Okay. Now, what is the actually first known record of a virus? It's going to be before 89. That's going to be actually in year 3700 BC. The polio actually has been known since that time. So here is an image showing, this is the first written record of infection that's from Memphis in Egypt. The showing a priest's leg here, circled in blue, is actually kind of deformed. And they concluded that the priest was infected with polio, which is the paralytic poliomyelitis. This is the one that causes typical symptoms like deformed limbs in children. Okay, and the second example is going to be in the year 1143 BC, which is a smallpox. Okay, so here this image shows that the Ramses V, the preserved mummy, they showed that his face actually has symptoms similar to the smallpox. And they concluded that he died of smallpox. And smallpox is one of the most dangerous viruses the human kind ever known. Here you can see the symptoms here, smallpox. So you can see the large, big pustules on the entire body. Okay, so this is the smallpox virus. So these are the two early known viruses. And let me get you a few interesting facts about actual viruses in general. Okay, first of all, the viruses, they're considered to be submicroscopic. That means they're smaller than bacteria and they cannot be seen under light microscope. You need a highly specialized electron microscope to see it. They're very, very small. And they're considered not living, but they actually require a living cell. And in scientific terminology, they're called obligate parasites. Okay, and they're extremely simple in composition. They carry only few genes. Depending on the virus, the number of genes range from 4 to 200. Most of the plant viruses, they have no less than 4 to 5 genes. Even some of the notorious human viruses, they have no more than 20 genes. Okay, as compared to the human genes, we have 20,000, more than 20,000 genes. So as you can see that a virus having only 12 genes can take over a human body with 20,000 genes. Okay, and they're mostly host specific, meaning plant viruses cannot infect humans and human viruses cannot infect plants. But however, there's some exceptions there. That is animals to humans. That means a lot of viruses, what we see in today's world, especially those pathogenic to humans, in fact, they come from animals to humans. Okay, and naming of virus, how do the viruses are named? So they use, it's a very unique and a very thoughtful, the way they name it. And you all heard about influenza, which is the common flu. So how did the name influenza come from? So it says here, influenza means the influence of the air. Because in those days, they thought that because when people breathe air, they're getting sick, they're getting the flu. That's what they thought, it's the influence of the air. That's how the name influenza. And Ebola is another one. That's another most dangerous virus. And in a river in Congo, it's called Ebola. That's how it's named after the river. So there are different names given to different viruses. Maybe I'll talk about the coronaviruses, which is the COVID, how the name was given as we go through. And shapes-wise, viruses come as wide range of sizes and shapes. Okay, here are a few examples. One is the influenza, as you can see how these viruses look like. Okay, influenza. And this is Ebola, which looks like really a snake-like. Okay, it's a very unusual shape. And then it's a poliovirus. It's one of the smallest known virus that's pathogenic to humans, polio. And then, of course, the classic tobacco mosaic virus, which looks like a stiff rods. So these are the first virus that were discovered, like I mentioned earlier, and a lot of history or the development of virology and even science in general. Both biochemistry and molecular biology, cell biology was developed using tobacco mosaic virus as a model system. Now, how do the viruses spread? Okay, through aerosol, like influenza or COVID-19, just simply through air. Okay, if a person infected with influenza or COVID, if he sneezes, he or she, each droplet will have thousands of particles, virus particles. And the other person who breathes, it can enter through your nasal system. Okay, and other one is the blood transfusion or sexual contact. Example is HIV, that is the AIDS, that is a human immunodeficiency virus. This is mostly transmitted through either blood transfusion or through sexual contact. And insects play a major role in transmitting some viruses like West Nile and Zika viruses, which in the last few years probably you heard about Zika and West Nile. They're transmitted by insects, mostly the mosquitoes. And also, they're crossing the species barrier. This is one of the unique features of the viruses. They can cross the species, like that means animals to humans, and that is referred to as zoonotic. That means the viruses crossing from animals to humans. The typical example is COVID and the swine flu. I'm going to some examples how these actually they cross, how they're from animals to humans, how do they come? Okay, so those are about a few facts about viruses. Now, if you look at the composition, what are the viruses composed of? They're extremely simple in organization. Very, very simple. As you can see here, they have contain a very minimal number of components. They are not complicated at all. Actually, very few viruses are complex, but the majority of the viruses are very simple. Here, the picture shows here the two viruses. One is called a naked and other one is called enveloped. These naked viruses, they simply consist capsid protein and nucleic acid inside. That's all they have. And some viruses, in addition to the capsid and nucleic acid, outside, they have some envelopes. And this envelope, mostly they acquired from the host, they infect, and mostly animals and human, because plant viruses never have this envelope, only the human viruses. And outside, they have these spikes, and these spikes serve as accessory proteins to attack or to attach the cells they infect. That's how they enter. Okay, and the nucleic acid type, this is called a genome or the infectious part. Out of the whole virus, the nucleic acid is the infectious part. It's not the protein. So the nucleic acid could be either ribonucleic acid or deoxyribonucleic acid. And it could be either single-stranded or double-stranded, or more of biochemistry, plus or minus sense. I'm not going to go into details. But it's interesting to know that a lot of highly pathogenic viruses, in fact, they contain RNA as a genome. Majority of the viruses, they have RNA as a genome. Okay, although initially they thought DNA is the genetic material, that's where the life has started. But while studying with viruses, it was concluded that, in fact, it's not the DNA, it is the RNA is the life has started. Okay, so let's not go into details on that. And next to the pandemic, the most known pandemic is the first pandemic. What occurred was in the influenza in 1918. Okay, so here is an image showing in 1918. This is also called a Spanish flu. Okay, although it's called Spanish flu, it in fact did not originate in Spain. The virus actually originated in France, Britain, and in the United States. Here, as you can see, this image in 1918. Okay, so, but the reason why it's called Spanish flu, because during World War I, Spain became neutral. And they're using the media to communicate people about the war and all. And so at the same time, this flu came, that's what they started mentioning in their media. That's why they thought it's originated in Spain, okay? But it did not originate in Spain. And this is one of the most deadliest pandemic the humankind has known. In fact, it killed more than the people that actually died in World War I. About 50 million people died because of this influenza pandemic. Okay, so mind you, in 1918, nothing is known about viruses. The technology was not there. And then how did people overcome this disease? How did they control? Okay, so one of the interesting things that appears in the days is here, as you can see, like what we are experiencing today, because the influenza spreads through air, they recommended wearing masks. That's one way to prevent like getting the virus. Okay, as you can see here in San Francisco, it's called must wear a mask. They made an ordinance. Everybody must wear a mask. Otherwise, people fined $5. Of course, in those in 1918, $5 was a lot of money. Okay, that's how they actually stopped spreading virus. And here is, this is again a couple of news here. Everyone is compelled to wear masks by city resolution here. And here in the Seattle, all the cops are wearing masks. This is simply to prevent the spread of influenza. But the way the virus actually disappeared, or is kind of people overcome this disease, because all the people, that majority of the people, they died. And people who survived, they developed some resistance. That's how the virus actually, in 1988, it took almost 1 year to disappear. Okay, not due to vaccine, anything else, simply following the ordinance like wearing masks. That's the important thing. Okay, now the viruses that we are interested in is COVID. Okay, this is classified actually as coronaviruses. That's what they call coronaviruses. So why did the name called corona? Corona means crown. Okay, because these viruses in physical appearance, they look like a crown. That's what they arrange. That's what they call coronaviruses. The first one is, everybody knows, the SARS. This is called severe acute respiratory syndrome. This SARS virus actually, it started in 2002 to 2004 and killed about 774 people. And it was thought to be extremely dangerous in 2002. And a lot of people started wearing masks to prevent, because this also spreads through air. Okay, but it's been controlled surprisingly, because people took extreme care, and it was not as infectious as influenza and even COVID what we're experiencing. That's a simple preventive measures they took, like cleaning the doorknobs in China with bleach, and also people wearing masks, and we actually got rid of SARS. And how did SARS actually originate? Its outbreak happened in China, and its natural host is bat. And these bats, basically, they actually, bats, they actually suck blood on the animals. And one of the animals, these bats, they feed is called masked palm civet. And apparently this civet is a delicacy in China. They eat, and apparently by eating the SARS-infected civet, and it actually went from civet to humans. That's how the virus got transmitted. And the total cases recorded in the around 8,400 and about 916 deaths. So, but the virus has been controlled very nicely. And the second one is called a MERS, or called Middle Eastern East Respiratory Syndrome. And this one, it first appeared in Jordan and Saudi Arabia. And this is from actually camels, because again, the bats probably, they fed on camels and transmitted the MERS to camels. And then because in Saudi Arabia, the people, they drink camel milk, and they're closely associated with camels, and the virus jumped from camels to humans. And that's how the MERS got actually came to the human population. But it didn't become that serious. Okay, so now we come to the main coronavirus. It's called COVID. And COVID is the disease called coronavirus disease. But actually the virus that causes this COVID-19 is called a SARS coronavirus 2. Okay, and this is how the virus looks like. So the COVID-19 is the official name. It was because, as you know, it happened in December 2019 in China. And this is called coronavirus 2. And now it's actually over 108 million cases have been confirmed worldwide. Okay, and about 2.2 million lives. Of course, in the US, we recorded about 500,000 people died. Okay, and the way the virus looks like, as you can see, it's the virus like a corona, as the name suggests. It has these spikes, looks like a corona, like a crown. That's why it's called coronavirus. And this is looks circled like icosahedral, and outside you have these proteins or the spikes. These are the ones the virus uses to attach the cells, and inside it has a simple nucleic acid called ribonucleic acid. Okay, so as you can see, it's very simple. Inside you have a nucleic acid, outside it's got an envelope and proteins like envelope proteins and the spikes. So like not many proteins are involved in it. But as you can see, the virus is extremely dangerous virus. Okay, COVID. So we'll talk a little bit more about COVID. Now, what are the symptoms of COVID? Most of you know that the symptoms, first of all, it's called loss of smell. People who infected with this COVID, they experience the loss of smell. That's one of the symptoms. And also they have a wet cough and sore throat. And also they have congestion and runny nose. And of course, the virus, that's the beginning. And then it goes and attacks almost every organ in the human body. That's what doctors are seeing. Okay, everything, whatever we know about COVID is entirely new to humans because we never experienced this kind of infection through virus. And the nose is the ground zero for the SARS because that's how it enters. Okay, and this is, I don't want to go into details. And these are the sites the virus recognizes and enters the respiratory system, and it spreads down to the respiratory tract and to the lungs. So that's why the doctors and everybody recommends wearing a mask so that to prevent contracting this virus. Okay, so as you can see, sorry. Oh, my mouse is playing. Okay. What happened here? Sometimes this, okay. Okay, here it is. Mask, this is the perfect way to wear a mask because a lot of people actually wear wrongly. Then you can easily get the virus. Okay, this is too much. You need to cover like this. And this is not good because you got to cover both nose and mouth. Okay, that's what this is. That is the perfect way of wearing the mask and prevent getting this disease. Okay, that's about corona. Now the question is, so, and as you know, since for the last 1 year, we've been experiencing COVID throughout the world. And lately, you've been hearing a lot of variants are showing up of the COVID, right? Like UK variant or Brazilian variant. So what is a variant? Like a lot of people don't know what is actually a variant. Okay, here is an example what we're showing. Like, for example, this is called a parental virus. Like I showed you earlier, it's a virus, it's got a nucleic acid, and outside you have these spikes. And let's say one of the spike, I just name it as Z for the sake. And this is the nucleic acid, and this is the sequence, okay? And this is the how the RNA sequence is there. And 3 nucleotide bases makes 1 amino acid. I'm not using the actual amino acid terminology here because just not to confuse. I just name it as XYZ. Like you can see different nucleotides, 3 nucleotides makes 1 amino acid. And collectively, these amino acids, they make a protein. That's what the parental virus. And the way the virus works, once it enters the body, it's going to replicate or make new progeny viruses. Okay. And most of these viruses, once they enter, within a very short period of time, like less than 8 to 10 hours, they replicate very efficiently and produce billions of virus particles. They're that efficient. Okay, so the most important process is the replication. That means the nucleic acid, it is going to replicate or make new progeny RNAs. So what happens with the RNA replication, the enzyme that catalyzes the replication is called RNA polymerase. So inherently, the RNA polymerase is actually a lot of error prone, or it does not have a proofreading activity. Meaning, for example, here, this is the RNA, that's what it replicates, right? Once undergoes replication. So instead of here, ACG, the U has been introduced while replication. So, but since the polymerase enzyme has no proofreading activity, the enzyme cannot go back and correct this to U to C. It cannot make it. Because of this introduction of this U here, now the protein, instead of a Z, it now changes to X. Okay, this is a mutant. That's why now this protein instead of a Z, now it's called X. So this is different from a parental virus. That's why this is called a variant. Okay, and one interesting fact about this is this RNA polymerase can introduce about, for every 1,000 nucleotides it makes one mistake. Now for coronavirus, the nucleic acid sequence is about 30 kilobases. That means 30,000 nucleotides. For each replication cycle, 30 times 4 means it can make up to 120 mutants it can make. Okay, that's a lot of mutants, but majority of the time the mutations occur in a wrong place, and a lot of these mutants, they die. And sometimes these mutants could be neutral in that particular host. For example, if I get infected with coronavirus, this mutant, it may not make or not cause a serious disease in me because of my genetic makeup. But if I transmit this virus to other people via air, and the person who gets that, because of that person's genetic makeup, the same mutant could be very serious. Okay, so that's why you see a lot of people become asymptomatic, because that's because of their genetic makeup. But the same virus, when they transmit to the other people, it could be extremely dangerous. Okay, so that's how the variants actually they come up. Okay, and as the virus replicates, it's going to keep on generating mutants and mutants and mutants. Okay, so now the question is how this coronavirus is different from influenza, because both of them cause almost similar symptoms. All right, so now this is the coronavirus, as I showed you. It's a single-strand RNA, the genome, and it only encodes 14 proteins. Okay, as opposed to 20,000 genes in humans. And if you look at influenza, influenza and COVID, they are not the same viruses, they're totally different viruses. Okay, the shape-wise, they both look alike, but inside you have a nucleic acid. This is a positive strand RNA, but here it is a negative strand RNA. That's the difference. And in addition, it's got only one piece of RNA, whereas this one has 8 independent RNA segments. That is the infectious nucleic acid. It's a negative sense, but it's divided or distributed among 8 different segments. And it encodes only 9 proteins total. Okay, so that's the difference. So these two, some people think SARS and influenza are the same virus. No, they're totally distinct viruses. Their genome organization is different. The number of proteins they code is different. Okay, so that's. Now the question is now, so in spite of this available vaccine for influenza over last probably 50, 60 years, but every year we keep getting the influenza. Whereas we got rid of polio, has been eradicated, smallpox has been eradicated using vaccines. Then why we are not able to eradicate influenza? It's keep coming every year. Okay, so this is the reason why we are not able to eradicate. First of all, the flu epidemics. Its host range is extremely wide. Okay, the influenza can infect birds, pigs, humans. Okay, that means we actually live very close proximity to all these birds like chicken, okay, and pigs. And influenza infecting chickens can go to pigs, and from pigs or from chicken, it can come to humans. Like I told you earlier, it can cross the species. That means the influenza viruses, they keep circulating among all these species, okay? And here's an example. For example, how people live close to chickens and pigs. And if anybody come very close to the pig like this, the virus can cross from pigs to humans. That's how the swine flu actually originated, which created a real havoc both in the United States and worldwide. Okay, so that's why the influenza virus, they're different influenza viruses, but they can keep on circulating among all these species. So if you create a vaccine against one influenza, and if that vaccine given to a person, but if it's a new influenza strain, for example, it comes from a pig, like as in the case of swine flu, or a chicken, it cannot protect. Okay. For example, a couple of years ago in the United States, we got vaccinated with influenza, and suddenly people got sick. And when they found out, actually that particular strain of influenza came from Australia. It's been imported from Australia. So it can happen. Okay, so that's how the influenza basically keep mutating and generating. Now with coming to the coronavirus, or the crossing the species barrier for coronavirus, then how do the coronaviruses, they actually come to humans? Here is the coronavirus. Like I said, the natural host is a bat. And the secondary hosts are going to be either camels or some cats or some mice. And from there, it can come to humans, okay? Especially in China, because they eat all sorts of animals, okay? So that's why the bats can transmit, or they can feed on these animals. And when Chinese collect these animals and they use for their food, and it can actually jump from the animals to humans. Here are the examples here for the intermediate. They're all the coronaviruses. The intermediate hosts, these are all. So for example, there's bats to this animal, and to cows, to rats, and to the civet, like what I told you, the SARS, and from bats to camels, with MERS, and it can now haven't seen the pigs, but there could be other animals. These viruses and bats, same coronavirus can be transmitted to other animals. And when we come across these animals, they can cross and they come to humans. Okay, so that's how these come. And another example for the species barrier is interesting would be retroviruses, or HIV. Okay, it's called human immunodeficiency virus. So this actually is not native to humans. It was actually native only to chimpanzees in Africa. Okay, so this is called, in Central Africa, what the people do is they hunt the chimpanzees for their food. And it's called a simian foamy-virus. That's what they present in chimpanzees. And when people, they hunt the chimpanzees, and not knowing it can get transmitted through the blood, because if this person, while hunting, if he cuts his finger and the blood like this here, it can enter through the cut to the humans, and the virus can infect. That's how the HIV actually entered human population. Okay, but one good thing about HIV is human is the only host for HIV, apart from chimpanzees. There are no other hosts. So that's why the HIV prevalent only in humans. And also, unlike influenza virus, it transmits only through sexual contact or blood transfusion. Okay, although HIV has been one of the most devastating viruses, it's no longer considered as a serious pathogen anymore. The reason is because people, they got educated how to prevent the transmission of HIV, that is using condoms while having this sexual intercourse. So that's how actually you don't see or you don't hear about HIV anymore. It's no longer a serious pathogen. Of course, there is no vaccine has been found to HIV, okay? Like, because it's an RNA virus, and what I can tell, because I don't want to go in details, like I told you, there are about more than 5,000 viruses. You can keep 4,999 viruses on one side, HIV on the other side. Because the way this HIV evolved was very, very, very sophisticated. The reason is the most important thing that all the viruses are controlled in our system is because of our immunity. But HIV, what it does is it attacks your immune system itself. It weakens your immune system. As a result, although it's a slow progressing disease, once your immune system is weakened, you are not killed due to HIV, but you are killed due to secondary infections. A lot of secondary infections like pneumonia and other things, they come in and people are going to die. Okay, so that's about HIV. So let's not talk about it too much on this. Now the question is, what is a vaccine? This is what everybody thinks. Now everybody's suggesting, okay, vaccine is very, very important. You have to take a vaccine so that you can get protected from the virus. Okay, and unlike a bacteria, viruses cannot be controlled using drugs or antibiotics. Okay, there is no drug or no antibiotics available to control viruses. So only way you can control is a vaccine. So vaccine is not a drug, it's not a chemical. Okay, first one. Second one is it's made from a virus itself. Basically, either a small part of the virus, I'll give you some examples, or a whole virus. That's what they use. Okay, and Then it teaches the body. What they do is once you prepare a vaccine, like for example, take a virus and inactivate it so that it won't cause a disease, and they inject into the body. And because virus being a protein, your immune system would recognize the protein as a foreign body and it generates antibodies. So as a result, you will develop a lot of antibodies in the virus. And most of the times they make, like for example, the influenza, okay, they make basically the influenza, a replicatable influenza virus, but it does not cause a disease. So when the virus keeps replicating in your body, so your immune system would recognize the virus and keep on generating antibodies. Okay, so that's about in simple terms what a vaccine is. Okay, now what is the concept of a vaccine? When did the concept of vaccine came? It's not relatively new. It's been there since year 1796, the vaccination. I'm sure most of you know that. This is actually happened in 1796. Edward Jenner, who is the one who started to control smallpox. Here is an example, because there is another disease similar to smallpox called cowpox. Okay, and what he noticed was some of these milkmaids, they contrived this cowpox. They did show the lesions, but they did not develop a disease. So what he thought is, okay, let's take a cowpox from this milkmaid and first put it into a human body. And since a lot of people are not volunteering, so what he did is he did the experiment on his own son. So he first injected the cowpox and waited for a week or two, and then deliberately infected the boy with a smallpox. And the kid did not develop any symptoms. So that's the first concept of virus using against virus itself. Okay, so that's the concept of using an attenuated virus or a non-pathogenic form of the virus, use it as a vaccine. That's what the actual vaccine concept has come. So the question is, now why do we need a vaccine? Okay, it's very important. First of all, no major viral epidemics have been defeated without a vaccine. Like I said, viruses cannot be controlled using drugs or antibiotics. So both smallpox and polio, they have been completely eradicated using only vaccine. That's very important to know. And second thing is, vaccine has significantly reduced the number of illness and deaths. Both polio, measles, hepatitis, all these infections, you don't see anymore because of a vaccine. Okay, and also vaccine is essential to fight diseases like COVID, because this virus is spreading so rapidly. The only way you can control this disease using a vaccine. So if you look at some of the success stories of the vaccine, here you can see this. These are some of the examples where the vaccines are, like diphtheria, hepatitis, measles, mumps, polio, rubella, smallpox, all these. These are the years in peak, and there are how many cases here. And after vaccination, as you can see, the numbers have been significantly reduced. Take, for example, polio. Okay, so 0, smallpox 0, and same thing with diphtheria 0. There are very limited number of cases keep occurring because of hepatitis. And now to make a vaccine, you cannot make a vaccine overnight. It takes time to develop. Here the number of years, an example to give you how the vaccine was developed. As you can see that polio, it took 45 years to develop. Okay, yellow fever, 35 years. HSV, although it's been more than 101 years, there is no vaccine available. Same thing with HIV, for example. More than 37 years, people are working on a vaccine for HIV, but it's not being developed. Okay, so that's why it's very important to have a vaccine, and you need to study the virus first, and you have to know how the virus actually replicates, how it assembles into virions, how it causes a disease, and what sort of proteins are used to cause a disease. This takes a lot of study. But with COVID, the vaccine has been developed within a matter of 6 months. Everything, this is all because due to the technology, available technology. The technology was so sophisticated that you can very easily develop a vaccine as short as 6 months, as you've seen with COVID. Okay, Now, for developing a vaccine, these are the strategies they use. Like I said, vaccines are developed using the virus parts itself. The first one is the nucleic acid, the genome. Either DNA or RNA can be used to make a vaccine. Okay, and this is now they're trying with Moderna and in vivo, they're trying now to use RNA. And other one is a live attenuated. This is what they're using for influenza, for a lot of other viruses, including the smallpox. Basically, they use, what they do is they take the live virus itself and they attenuate it. That means the virus will be active once it enters your body, but it will not cause a disease. Same thing with inactivated one. Or the other strategy is to take a part of the subunit, that is the protein. That's what right now they're using for this COVID. They're using the Novax and all these, they're using it. The protein, they're taking one part of the spike protein. That's what the vaccine is right now. And they express it and they engineer it, they genetically engineer it. And that's what they're using it. And also the AstraZeneca and all, they're using a different strategy. They're using the RNA that is encoding the spike protein. They put it into a viral vector, mostly the adenoviruses. This is one of the viruses they cause adenoglands. So these are viral vector based. So the current technology is not a protein based, it's an RNA based. It's a nucleic. This is a really a brand new technology, but it's very rapid. And since the sequence of this virus is known, you know which nucleic acid codes for which protein. So you can design or you can engineer a vaccine based on their strategy. So now with COVID, here are the examples. For example, how some of the COVID vaccines, Pfizer, they're using RNA. That means they take the RNA part of the spike protein, one of the spike proteins, and you need 2 doses, and it's 90% effective. But only thing is it needs to be stored at minus 70 degrees because of the stability. And Moderna, the same RNA, but unlike minus 70, which is not easy to keep at minus 70 because only hospitals and universities have minus 70s. Whereas pharmacies and all, now they can keep it at minus 20 degrees, Moderna. And other one is the Oxford University AstraZeneca. They're using the viral-based vectors. And this is also giving a very strong immune response. And the advantage of this is it can be stored in a regular refrigerator. Okay. And this other Sputnik, this is in Russia. So they are using same viral vector strategies. And this also can be stored at regular fridge. So these are the vaccines that are available right now.
Dr. Rao, how long is that? Because we need to...
Another maybe 5 minutes.
Because Dr. Jain, yeah, okay. Because
5 minutes.
Jane Hutt is leaving in about 5 minutes. So
yeah, I'll finish pretty soon.
Sorry.
So to quickly go through why human volunteers, because like I said, everybody is genetically different. That's why you need to test how the vaccine actually works on every individual based on the sex, race, and also pre-existing conditions. So that's why they are testing a lot of humans. And of course, the safety of the volunteers is very important. That means all the vaccines developed, they really test for the safety. So they're all controlled by institutional review boards and human resources and US Food and Drug Administration. So they're very safe. So vaccines are extremely safe. So the question is now, why should everyone get a vaccine? This is the important aspect. Okay, why should we get a vaccine? Okay, let me go here. This is called a concept of herd immunity. What herd immunity means here, for example, in this figure it shows, now this person in red, he's the one who's infected with, let's say, COVID. All the people with green, they have been vaccinated. People with yellow, they are not vaccinated. So this person can transmit this virus only to the people that are not vaccinated, because all these people are protected. So in this case, if majority of the people are vaccinated, as you can see, the spread is going to be limited. As you can see here, the immunity level is 85, the susceptible person only 15% spread. By contrast, infected person, if a lot of people are not vaccinated, the virus can spread rapidly to majority of the people. Like in this case, 68% it can spread. Like I said, the viruses, they replicate, they produce a lot of mutants. So in this case, if majority of people are not vaccinated, when they get infected, they're going to generate a lot of mutants. And those mutants can spread to other people. And some of the mutants cannot be controlled by the existing vaccine. So that means all vaccinated people can get reinfected. So that's why it's very important that everybody should get vaccinated to minimize the replication, to minimize the generation of the variants or mutants and spread. That's very important. So the final message, what I'm going to say is here, got to be a responsible citizen of your country and stop the COVID spread and get vaccinated. It's extremely safe. There is no, I had my both doses. I did not experience any side effects at all. Okay. And a lot of my friends, they had it. So most of them, at the most, they may get very low grade fever for one day and then they're cleared. The advantages of vaccine outweigh the sufferings what you're going to go through due to vaccination. Okay. So that's where I'm going to stop. And probably,
Thank you
let
very
me,
much.
yeah. And let me answer one question here I got from somebody.
Shall we do that later on, Dr. Ross? Sorry, it's already an hour, so we'll catch up with the. Thank you.
Okay. Now open. Yeah.
May I? Yeah, it was very good, informative, Dr. Rao, and I would now have the pleasure to warmly welcome the Deputy Minister and Chief Whip, Jain Hutt, who leads on equality and human rights issues for the Welsh government.
Mm-hmm.
Jane has been a great supporter of our events, to say the least. May I now hand it over to Jane, please? Can you unmute yourself and speak, Jane? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Prynhawn Da. Good afternoon from here in Wales. Thank you so much, Sujatha. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Dr. Rao, can you please stop the screen sharing? Please stop the screen sharing. Yeah, thank you very much.
I can stop.
Can I say, Dr. Rao, how pleased I am to have been here this afternoon to hear your what was an eminent lecture for me. It's very important that politicians, elected representatives, can be part of this to learn. We always have so much to learn, but I'm really pleased to be here with you this afternoon. It's a global event, educate the community with the much needed focus on the vaccine and the infodemic surrounding its use. So I hope that we can work together, and out of this event this afternoon, we can ensure that we're increasing the uptake of vaccinations. Now, I'm not sure where my screen seems to have gone a bit strange. Let's just see where we are. I've come into another part. Right, hold on. Back, there I am. I keep seeing part of my room. This is virtual working, isn't it? And virtual conferences, some of the downtowns. But I am so pleased to be with you, because what we have to do is strongly refute misinformation. So important that what the point you've made, Dr. Rao, about be responsible, be a responsible citizen of your country, and that's the message that will come out of this afternoon's today's event. It's strongly refuting misinformation and issuing a plea for all to help in the fight against COVID-19. And as we all know, COVID-19 is having a disproportionate impact on our communities. Taking the vaccine really is the only way, as we've heard, to boost immunity to the virus and to limit the spread. Of course, people do listen to clinicians. There's no question about it. They listen to clinicians in our communities. So we're encouraging all our clinicians, and they are at the heart of our communities, the GPs today, so many joining us today, our public health specialists, our chief medical officers, and all of those who people respect because of their knowledge, their professional expertise. And also, I know you're going to be hearing more from the pharmaceutical and the pharmacists as well, because they are people that people trust. But also politicians have a responsibility, and the ministers, as we are in the Welsh government, need to ensure that we give all the resource and backing that we can to get this message over. So our doctors and clinicians in Wales have made it abundantly clear that the vaccine is safe for all ethnic minority and faith communities. I chair an interfaith forum, the Faith Communities Forum in Wales, and we all come together, all faiths, and we address issues that are of concern to people. It was great when one of our Welsh citizens from one church, I think it was a Christian church, said, myself and my wife were so pleased that our Muslim doctor gave us our vaccinations. It was a very strong statement. And of course, that's what we need to look at. So what we're doing is working with race and faith groups across Wales to find out what's the best way to get the message over, to help protect, support and encourage vaccination take-up in our Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities particularly. But of course, there are others who are resistant as well, we know, and we've seen those statistics, but we're monitoring vaccine uptake by ethnicity alongside looking at other barriers and motivators to vaccination. It has helped to inform ongoing community engagement activity, and we'll learn more from this afternoon, I know, and it will be fed back to me. I'm actually going to shortly meet with a local ethnic minority group in my constituency in the next half hour, and we will be talking about these issues. We need to reach out, and that's what we've been doing in the Welsh Government throughout this pandemic. We're working also closely with community and faith leaders to address any concerns that individuals have to help tackle misinformation, but also considering the use of faith settings, places of worship, the use of mosques, temples, other places of worship, making it easier for people to access the vaccine within communities, because we have got to tackle this deadly virus, and we can only do this by uniting as one community to dispel misinformation. But we also recognise, as we have all globally, that the pandemic has disproportionately been detrimental to our Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, and it has exposed deep disparities within Wales, not just in health, but also in other socio-economic areas, in jobs, education, housing. These are socio-economic factors that come forth as well as causing this disproportionate impact. And I've had guidance, and there's plenty of evidence to show this, a real lived experience of our communities who felt the harsh impact of the pandemic across all areas of their lives. So here in Wales, the First Minister, Mark Drakeford, and myself are delivering a race equality action plan for Wales before the end of our Senedd Cymru term, which is likely to be in the next few weeks. We have grounded that plan in a vision that we need to recognise the need for fundamental change and reflect our commitment to listen to communities, to see what the barriers are, to take action and to change the ways that are tangible to them. Look honestly and carefully at the structure and systems in society, in our public services, and the way we govern Wales, and consider how we can bring about real change for the lives of Black, Asian, minority ethnic people in Wales, and ensure that their voices are heard not just in community groups, but actually in powerful places as well, represented in public life and in political life as key citizens in Wales, which we are a nation of sanctuary in Wales, and we're very proud of that. So thank you for all your work together. Thank you so much to the mentoring, who are such an important partner to us in government, but have that strength and authority that we need as we learn from you. You have such dedication to build stronger, more cohesive communities together with us, mutual respect and kindness to overcoming barriers. And of course, it is about a caring, compassionate society that we all aspire to live in. And if those of us who are in government and have political responsibilities has to demonstrate that we mean that and that we will listen and learn. So thank you very much for giving me those opportunity for those few words as I'm with you today. I've only wished that I could learn more this afternoon, but I have to spread the message further within my locality, as in my community, as well as globally this afternoon. So thank you so much for inviting me, and I hope all goes well with the rest of the agenda and the question answer session. Diolch yn fawr, that's thank you very much in Welsh. Diolch yn fawr I chi gyd. Thank you to you all. Goodbye.
Thank you, Jain. Thank you so much for your time on a weekend. And you said some valid points on how we could come together and make sure that all will get vaccinated and remain safe, as well as we are part of the race equality anyway. To move on, we will have Sudarshan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm there, Sujatha. Yeah.
Sorry.
Can you hear me, Sujatha?
Yes, I can hear. Sudarshan, yes. Would you be able to introduce yourself and share some background information on the general COVID status in India? It would be great if you could also shed some light on India's vaccination production and vaccination programs. It's such a huge country. Just to let you know, Sudarshan Jain, who is a Secretary General at the Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance and Senior Advisor at private equity firm APAX Partners. Over to you, Sudarshan.
So thank you very much, Sujatha, and let me congratulate you for this excellent initiative. Great informative presentation by Dr. Rao and setting the context as far as overall agenda is concerned. I'm also the chair of International Generic and Biosimilar Association. I work closely with WHO. So what I like to do is talk in a very brief time, 5 minutes, because I'm conscious of time, Sujatha. What you have been saying is that it is a very important topic and one can talk for hours and hours together. But the biggest challenge, it is the biggest humanitarian challenge COVID-19 has. And in India, particularly when we were talking about COVID-19, we didn't know where we will land up because our healthcare infrastructure is not good. Doctor population is less. We didn't have ventilators in the country. PPEs were not available. Testing devices were not available. And we were suppliers to the world because 20% of medicine contribution comes from India. Every second vaccine is produced from India. We supply every third tablet to UK and European market, every third tablet in US. So the responsibility was, how do we make this whole system work when COVID happens? So just to put the context, is COVID a health crisis? Is COVID a political crisis? Is COVID an economic crisis? Is COVID a diplomatic crisis? In fact, it is the crisis everywhere. And the real test of nations, people, society comes during the crisis time. The Indian Prime Minister was very, very clear right from the start that the equitable distribution of treatment, vaccines, and overall process is very, very important. So the first thing which we lay a lot of emphasis, and if you see last year, 2020, was a lot of emphasis on the behavior aspect, the social aspect of managing COVID. As Dr. Rao was talking about, masking, very, very important. Social distancing, very, very important. Maintaining hygiene is very, very important. And it was demonstrated from the Prime Minister, from the Chief Minister, from the political leadership, because we didn't have any choice. Our healthcare infrastructure is not good. And the figures speak for ourselves. So we have been able to contain COVID to a larger extent because of a very strong social discipline which has existed in the country. So we have 11 million cases so far. The death rate is only 156,000, which is relatively lesser than other parts of the world. Then we had to play a very important role of provider of medicines around the world. So whether it is SCQ in the initial stage, because there are no perfect answers when you are dealing with this kind of crisis. So first, the first solution which came was hydroxychloroquine. We said that we will supply to the world. We supply paracetamol to the world. We supply azithromycin to the world. So we made sure that during this crisis, our manufacturing plants work at the maximum speed. So we declared our pharma industry as an essential industry and ensured that the production continues during this time. And we are very proud to say that around all parts of the world, Indian medicines are reaching. I'm the Secretary General of IPA, Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance, which contribute 85% export from India. And we are proud to say that we have made our medicines available. And that is our contribution, that we have been able to ensure that medicines are available. So whether it is repurposed drug, whether it is remdesivir, whether it is dexamethasone, whether it is ivermectin, because the great advantage of repurposed drug is you don't have to do safety of those products is proven. So what was being done beside the behavior aspect, there was an aspect of treatment which was coming. We were doing a lot of experiments and we were doing clinical trials, although all the drugs have not proven in the extensive trials, whether it is remdesivir or whether it is SCQ, but there was a movement forward. Then came the question of vaccine. And as Dr. Rao rightly said, vaccine will take 10 years' time, more than 10 years' time. They have been discovered, they have been developed in 1 year time, less than 1 year time. But the question is not only development of vaccine. The question is having the production capacity. The question is having distribution. The question is having administration of vaccine. And that is where the role of India comes in. India contributes 60% of vaccine production. Serum Institute is the largest in the world. And what Serum Institute said, and again, I will congratulate some of the entrepreneurs, some of the scientists. Adar Poonawala, he said in the month of September or October, I will build the capacity for vaccine production. He spent around $100 million to build the vaccine production capacity. And now he can produce 100 million doses of vaccine every month. Then we had Bharat Biotech, which came out with Bharat Serum, which came out with another vaccine. Then there are other manufacturers which are making vaccines like Zydus Cadila. Then we have got biological Evans. So what India can produce today can be the supplier of the world to vaccine. At this moment, I will also like to quote WHO. And the biggest problem we are having in the world today, and that is a political question, is at this moment, 16% of the world population is stockpiling 60% of vaccine production. If COVID is somewhere, it cannot be stopped to spread anywhere else. So COVID has to be treated across the world. And hence, equitable distribution of vaccines becomes very, very important. And the biggest political challenge at this particular moment is how do we ensure the availability of vaccines around the world? And that is where the role of India will come in. AstraZeneca has started producing vaccine. That is a Serum Institute is producing AstraZeneca vaccine. It has come out. And there's another vaccine which has been approved in India is Bharat Serum vaccine. We will have another vaccine coming from Dr. Reddy's, Sputnik vaccine, which is developed by Russia. We will have some of the vaccine of Johnson & Johnson coming from India. And then there are local vaccines which are being developed from Zydus. So what we are seeing, yes, we will have quantity of vaccine from India. The second question will be distribution. We cannot have vaccines which cannot be distributed. That's why minus 80 degrees in case of Pfizer doesn't work in India. So what we are trying to work out solution, which is 2 to 8 degrees, and most of these vaccines follow that kind of storage condition. The third part is administration of vaccine. At this moment, we have got only 300,000 vaccines which are given every day, which is too small for a country like India. We have got 1.6 billion population. And if we have got vaccines at this rate, nothing will happen in India. So what we are trying to do, first we are taking a stock of where do we stand in terms of vaccine production. And we have to also play an equitable role, supply vaccine to other parts of the world. Despite Indian citizens, we are also supplying to Brazil, we are supplying to Canada, we are supplying to Nepal. So we are trying to create that balance. And the second is we also want to ramp up our vaccine administration program. And the government has announced that not only government hospitals, but perhaps we have to use private sector administration of vaccines. We have been very successful, Dr. Rao, you are aware of it, that polio we have been able to contain. We have got the administration system, which is available in India. What we want to do is ramp up that facility. And we want to ramp up from 300,000 vaccine administration to 3 million vaccine administration every day. And if we do that, we will be doing around 90 to 100 million vaccine administration every month, which will be a great example to the world. And we want to do 300 million in next 3 months, which will take care of over 50 population suffering from even comorbid disease. So the vaccine administration program, it will be example to the world. And I will conclude by saying that India is the vaccine capital of the world. India makes most of the vaccines, more than 60% of the vaccine. And what India will be setting example is vaccine administration. I will also conclude by saying vaccines alone are not the answer. It is the integrated approach. Wearing mask becomes important, as Dr. Rao was also talking about. Social distancing is important, hygiene is important, and vaccine is only one part of the overall strategy. We have got a greatest humanitarian challenge, and I'm sure we will live up to it. Sujatha, let me once again congratulate you for excellent initiative, and all the very best for this initiative.
Thank you, Sudarshan, for shedding some light on what's happening in India at the moment. Our next speaker is Natasha Thaladi, who is currently a hospital pharmacist in London.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining in today. Thank you, Dr. Rao, for such an informative talk about vaccines, and Diolch yn fawr, and thank you, Jain, for talking about the commitment to reaching out to wider communities to ensure public safety about vaccines. Thank you, Sudarshan, for sharing your experience in India and vaccine production from Serum Institute, India. From a clinical pharmacist perspective, I'm here to talk about and explain to you about the safety and efficacy of COVID vaccines, which will help you make the right decisions about receiving one. So firstly, sorry, just bear with me 1 second.
Sorry, anything happened, Natasha?
Sorry, there's a problem. Just bear with me 1 second. Sorry, apologies. So let's start. Firstly, how effective are these vaccines? So in the UK, there are currently 3 vaccines available at the moment, and more are coming. More are becoming available as we speak. So the efficacy between all the vaccines that are available at the moment is about 70 to 95%. And all of these vaccines in clinical trials included several thousand people from different, from a wide range of population in terms of their age, their gender, their ethnicity, and pre-existing medical conditions. So the vaccines are safe to use across diverse demographics. So for people from a history of allergies to those with underlying medical conditions and those who are taking prescribed medications from their doctor. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later on in my presentation. So moving on to how safe are these vaccines. So there's so much information available and being circulated in WhatsApp groups, emails, and the internet. So it's understandable to have doubts and reservations about receiving a vaccine. However, it's so important to read accurate information from reliable sources on their safety and appropriateness before you make a final decision. So just to let you know that the vast majority of side effects that do occur from COVID vaccines are mild, they're short term, and the most common ones are discomfort at injection site, or feeling generally unwell, tired, feverish, or having a headache, or having joint pain or muscle pain. So what can you do when you have when you experience these side effects? You can take paracetamol to treat any of these side effects, and they will resolve quite quickly. But often side effects are a sign that the vaccine is doing its job. It can happen with many vaccines that some people might feel slightly unwell. For example, the flu vaccine that you get every year. You might feel unwell because your immune system is responding to the protein, but this doesn't mean that it's not a COVID illness, and it doesn't mean that the vaccine can give you coronavirus. So, and then moving on to how vaccines are tested and approved for use. This involves a number of steps, and I don't want to go too much into detail, but involves a lot of steps, phases 1 to 3 of clinical trials that look into finding the right dose, how effective and safe the vaccine is, and is it consistently effective in a wide range of population, as we have seen in all the COVID vaccine trials. So once this has been safely completed, the data from the clinical trials are assessed by regulatory bodies around the world to decide if it can be approved or not. So in the UK, we have the Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Products Agency, the MHRA, to carry out this role. And after the drug is licensed, we continue to monitor regularly the side effects of the vaccines or drugs to ensure that we have continued safe use of the vaccine in the general population. So COVID-19 vaccines have been granted emergency approval for use just to address the global pandemic. But regulatory bodies in the UK, in the US, in Europe and Canada, to name a few countries, have only done so after evaluating the data thoroughly for quality and safety and effectiveness. So you can be reassured that corners have not been cut to get this rolled out to the public as soon as possible. We have followed the right processes and we've looked at the right data to get this approved. So moving on to some real-time monitoring of side effects. So in the UK, as I said, we have the Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Products Agency, the MHRA, to monitor real-time side effects of the COVID vaccines as they're being rolled out to the public. And in some other countries from where you're joining us today, you might have similar systems in place. So this also makes sure that the product's advantages far outweigh the disadvantages. So as of 5th of February this year, 10 million doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech and Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine have been administered in the UK, and about 22,000 reports of suspected side effects have been reported, which means an overall reporting rate of just 3 in 1,000 doses of the vaccines administered. So what does this actually tell us? Well, you know, as a pharmacist, I often make decisions based on facts and data, and the number of side effects reported are small and they're also quite mild. It's important to note that not everyone will experience every single side effect that's listed on the product information leaflet or that we often hear about. So I can say that the strong evidence on the safety and efficacy of the vaccines and how well it works gave me the confidence and information I needed to get myself vaccinated. So this data is very reassuring, and the side effects are in line with what was seen in clinical trials from these vaccines. So then moving on, as you all know, that COVID vaccine development has been phenomenal. Many of you might be wondering how a vaccine for COVID was developed so quickly when this usually takes a considerable amount of time, as Dr. Rao shared with us with some of the examples of previous vaccine developments, which took a number of years. So there's quite a few reasons for this. Because of the global emergency, developing this vaccine has been prioritized by scientists, by drug companies, by governments, and a huge amount of collaboration has gone into making this happen as fast as possible. The vaccines have also been developed that have been developed so far, and more that are coming onto the market have all gone through the same amount of testing and safety processes as other vaccines, and they've been tested in tens of thousands of people. So we now have better technology to we also have better technology used in vaccine development, which wasn't available previously from some of the examples that Dr. Rao shared with us. So just because the COVID vaccine was developed so quickly doesn't mean that they're not effective or they're not safe or they're not tested properly. I can assure you that the efficient processes have been followed, and we've looked into the data that's available on their safety and efficacy thoroughly before rolling them out to the public. So next, I'm going to focus on some of the common questions I've received from people. So the first question is the vaccine safe for people with heart conditions? Well, no vaccine would be approved unless it's considered safe for people with long-term conditions, including heart and circulatory conditions and older people. So the Pfizer-BioNTech, Oxford-AstraZeneca, and Moderna vaccine trials all included people with long-term conditions such as asthma, heart disease, liver and lung disease, diabetes, and high blood pressure. And as part of these clinical trials, researchers looked at whether there are any differences in how well the vaccine works in people with health conditions versus those without. And they found that they work just as well in both groups. So they are effective and safe in people with long-term conditions. And certainly from what we know and from what I see from working in the intensive care unit at the moment, that people with underlying medical conditions, for example, those with heart disease or chronic kidney disease, are at risk of more complications from COVID. And so these are the people that we really want to ensure that they are vaccinated and they receive the right information to make the right choices. So the next question, is the vaccine safe for people taking blood thinners like warfarin or other anticoagulants like apixaban, or antiplatelets like aspirin or clopidogrel? Generally, yes, but you should always let the person giving you the vaccine know that you're taking an anticoagulant. Like most vaccines, COVID vaccine is injected into the muscle of your upper arm. So the injections into your upper arm might cause more bruising if you're taking a blood thinner, or may bleed a little bit longer than usual. But this is not a cause for concern, and this shouldn't be the reason for not taking the vaccine. Most people taking blood thinners when they're first started on these medications are often told that if they cut themselves or they hurt or bruise themselves, they might bleed a little bit longer than those people who are not taking these medications. So when you have the vaccine, when you have the vaccine, just apply firm pressure at the injection site. And if you experience any bleeding at the injection site, it might take a little bit longer to stop, or you may get more bruising on your upper arm. But like I said, this shouldn't be the reason for you to not get the vaccine. And it's really important to also remember that to make sure that your anticoagulation treatment is stable. So this generally means that you will have been taking the same dose for a while, and that if you are on warfarin, that your INR checks are up to date and your latest INR level was in the right range. So then moving on to the next question. How long do you have to wait after you test positive before being vaccinated? You know, one of my friends just texted me the other day, mentioned that a relative tested COVID positive and her vaccination had to be cancelled. So this can happen. So it's important to let your body to completely recover from the symptoms before you get the vaccine. So in the UK, we recommend at least 4 weeks after being tested positive or you experience symptoms of COVID before being vaccinated. And I believe the CDC in the US also recommends the same amount of time between testing positive and getting your vaccine. And moving on to vaccines and religion, as Jain Hutt mentioned about working with different religious groups, the COVID vaccine does not contain any ingredients derived from pigs, cows, or other animals. It doesn't contain any ingredients that are not kosher. So they are safe and appropriate to use in people from various religious backgrounds. And the next question is there anyone who can't have the vaccine? So if you experienced a rare anaphylactic reaction to a previous dose of the same vaccine, then you shouldn't have that vaccine. But this is very rare. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it. People with a history of allergies can have the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. And then if you have an allergy to any of the excipients in the different vaccines. For example, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine contains polyethylene glycol found in medications, cosmetics, and household goods, which some people might be allergic to. So if you're allergic to polyethylene glycol, you shouldn't have the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. But it doesn't mean that you can't have the other vaccines that are available. So it really depends on what the excipients are for some of these vaccines, just to make sure that you're not allergic to any of the excipients listed in the vaccine. And then the final question that I'm commonly asked is, can you still pass on the virus if you've had the vaccine? Well, we don't know for sure. And it may be possible that you can still pass on the virus if you've been vaccinated. So it's really important to follow guidelines around social distancing and hand washing to help stop the spread. You will still need to self-isolate if you have symptoms and you've been in contact with someone who has experienced symptoms. And it's important to remember that we have new data coming out all the time. For example, recently we found out that the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine appears to reduce transmission of the virus. Further research is being carried out at the moment that will help answer this question with more certainty in the future. And finally, I would like to summarize by saying that COVID vaccines have been through rigorous testing and approval processes, and we have compelling data to show their safety and effectiveness. The side effects are often mild, they resolve quite quickly. So it's important to remember that not everyone will experience all the side effects. Vaccinations, like some of our speakers have shared, is the single most effective way to reduce deaths and severe illness from COVID-19. And the National Health Service and regulatory bodies around the world would not approve this vaccine and would not offer the vaccine to the general public unless it is safe to do so. So please play your part and think carefully before you make a decision. And it's important to remember that everyone needs to be safe, and we're not safe until everyone is safe. Thank you so much for listening today.
Thank you so much, Natasha, for clarification on some of the most pressing questions at the moment. Last but not least, I'm now going to introduce our final panel speaker, Dr. Sunil Pulapaka. Sunil is a child and adolescent psychiatrist here in Wales.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Natasha. I echo your thoughts and your slides. I must say I have had both my doses of vaccine and still feeling positive. That's really good. So that's what I can echo. And also, thank you very much, Dr. Rao, for your amazing talk. I wish I was so attentive and we had proper professors in the microbiology lessons in my medical school. I'm really impressed. Thank you very much, Dr. Jain, for the information from India as well. Right, as you all know, we psychiatrists, we talk less and work more. I won't take a long time of yours, guys, but I want to just give you an update, basically. It's a complete transformation of the world we know at the moment. If you all are aware, on the 10th of October last year, we had our Mental Health Day, and WHO released a data basically mentioning that around 130 countries have reported a significant disruption in mental health services and people accessing it. I know mental health has always come the least at the current moment. It's more COVID and COVID-related vaccine. But again, I mean, I must say we are really fortunate. I'm sure probably most of my other colleagues from different parts of the world might agree, but we were really lucky that we had adopted the telemedicine, which is really lucky, and we are working on seeing our mental health patients. At the moment, I mean, you all may agree, there is very minimal budget being released at the moment for the mental health reams. So the WHO have started a move for mental health. Let's invest. That is one of the things. I want to just quote a couple of articles. One from a recent article from Lancet, which has started working on at the moment and quoted that it's still preliminary stages at the moment of gathering information. As same as other issues like financial instability, small social networks. These are one of the main things with current existing mental health problems. As COVID-19 is an unprecedented stressor as a result of economic recession and social connectivity. In many other samples, like, for example, cross-sectional studies have been done in Netherlands, they mentioned there have been few symptoms of depression, anxiety, stress, and sleeplessness. Apart from the pre-existing depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorders, which mean washing your hands, wearing masks, there has been notable decrease, I would say, in these people who have mental health problems. Basically, they have been much more relaxed because of the reduced medication or mitigation of transmission, because they're pretty much housebound. I probably, or most of my UK colleagues might be aware, the UCL have started a COVID-19 study wherein they are gathering information, collating data about mental health at the moment in terms of behavioral sciences. Again, which is funded by Professor Geddes, the National Institute of Health and Research at the moment. So that is on cards. I just wanted to mention, basically, I know I'm a child psychiatrist, but I work with most of my adult psychiatrist colleagues in terms of the clinical settings. As most of my adult psychiatric colleagues have reported, there has been a bit of increase in terms of substance misuse and alcohol abuse. Has been reported. Probably it's secondary to the ongoing anxieties, or probably loneliness, social isolation could be one of the reasons. But also it has impacted significantly on the staff deficits and stuff like that, basically to provide the adequate amount of care. Nevertheless, my AMS consultant colleagues are not really concerned, which is not really significant at the present moment. I quote them basically saying that in terms of the camps, apart from crisis calls like the self-harmers, probably as Sujatha initially mentioned about the 53% increase, isn't it, in terms of the domestic violence, loneliness, referrals have been gone up. So that is one of the main concerns I would mention. Apart from that, I think most of our kids, so touch wood so far, the autistic children, basically from the background, they are all self-isolating at the moment. So working from home, online work, which has mitigated the COVID circumstances. Just to summarize, I mean, I would mention is we all know mental health is still in preliminary stages at the moment, and the data is still in the process of collection. What I can say is we are waiting for a mental health time bomb once the vaccine and everything goes by. That is what we are waiting for. But hopefully, one thing I would say just before I finish is, I'm immunized at the moment, so fully 2 doses have been done. So please follow as Dr. Rao, Natasha, and Dr. Jain has suggested, social distancing, and try to adapt or accept taking the vaccine. Thank you, guys. Right.
Thank you, Sunil, and thank you all for those insightful talks. We will now commence with the question and answer portion of today's event. May I now introduce Jasmine Choudhary, Senior Practitioner for the Public Health Wales Preventable Disease Programme. Jasmine, would you please be able to let the audience know regarding the vaccination rollout of the programme in Wales and engagement with communities to tackle misinformation? Over to you, Jas.
Thank you very much, Sujatha. It's a pleasure to join you all today. And all the speakers, all the presentations have really been insightful, informative. So thank you to all the speakers. So as you've already heard, we're in a great position. So UK was the first country in the world to approve vaccines for COVID-19. So following rigorous review of their safety, quality and efficacy, the MHRA, which is the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, it's UK's independent regulatory body, has approved. First of all, we had the Pfizer vaccine beginning of December, then the AstraZeneca, Oxford University's vaccine towards the end of December, and then more recently, the Moderna vaccine has been approved. But currently, we're rolling out the Pfizer-BioNTech and the Oxford University AstraZeneca. Those are the two vaccines we're rolling out throughout UK. This is a global pandemic, as we've already heard. It's already claimed 2.45 million lives, and Wales is no exception to the kind of the impact it's had on our loved ones, families, and vaccines offer us a glimmer of hope. So in Wales, the vaccine rollout has been it's been one of the biggest, as you've already heard, the NHS has delivered so far in its history. In Wales, we've already vaccinated 853,904 people have already had their first dose, and around 32,000 have already had their second dose. So it's going very well. We are well on track, having met our couple of first milestones up until middle of February. So our milestone was to vaccinate the top 4 groups that the JCVI, which is the Joint Committee for Vaccination and Immunization, from their priority list, the 4 groups have, that milestone was met by middle of February. And now we're well on track fully to vaccinate group 5 to 9 by end of April. That's the target Wales has, and we are doing well with that milestone as well. Like other parts of the UK, the vaccination program is being rolled out through mass vaccination centres, GP practices. As you heard the minister say, we are looking at sort of community and faith centres, as well as sort of mobile units going out and vaccinating people. So yeah, it's going really well. The uptake has been really good. We've just had a look at some of the data that we are getting from the, so we are monitoring ethnicity, for example. So looking at inequalities, there are some variations between ethnic groups, and there's about 14% difference between the uptake between ethnic minority groups and white indigenous population in Wales. So we know there are some great, a lot of work to do in terms of tackling some of the misinformation. And we are working very closely with the Welsh government, with our communities. So organizations like East, Race Council Cymru, there's organizations who are, community groups that are supporting this community, faith groups, faith leaders. And we're working hard to tackle some of the misinformation we're seeing on social media, for example. So we have on our website, many information is available in different languages, easily accessible. We're also doing some WhatsApp messages, which can be easily shared throughout, community groups and stakeholders. So these are some of the steps we're taking, and we know this pandemic has had a disproportionate impact, as you've already heard, on BME population. So in terms of infection rate, in terms of suffering more severely if you are infected, but also death. And these can be due to occupational exposure. It can be due to socioeconomic status. So we are looking at monitoring closely as the vaccination program is being rolled out to ensure that all our communities are taking the vaccine when they're offered one. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you very much. That is exactly why we are here regarding the misinformation about the vaccination and about coronavirus itself. Next is Phil Henfrey, who is the head of news and programs for ITV Wales. The media, the power of media is so powerful, media is so powerful. The power of media means misinformation can be spread incredibly quickly. How have you, ITV Wales, mitigated this, and how will you continue to make sure the correct information is being distributed on your media channels? Over to you, Phil.
Thank you, Sujatha, and thank you to everyone. I mean, the part of my job, I guess, is about getting all the incredible information that we've heard today into the homes of people who can use that information. And for those of you that don't know what ITV Wales is, we are a part of the largest and most popular commercial broadcaster in the UK. We broadcast a national news for Wales. And in many ways, as a public service broadcaster, what the pandemic has done, I think, it's done sort of several things from an information perspective. But firstly, it really underlines the importance of what we do in terms of providing trusted information that's accurate and impartial. One of the things that's always probably useful to kind of remind people is we are very strongly regulated in terms of what we do, what we say, and how we say it. It is in effect against the law. We'd be breaking our own code and the law to knowingly provide misinformation. So in many ways, ourselves as a public service broadcaster, anybody consuming our news, whether that's on the television or consuming it online, they know that they can trust the information that we are giving them. And that's a very valuable thing, as we've just heard, in society, because there's a lot of distrust. I think there's a lot of distrust in certain communities of authority and so on and so forth. There's also malicious spreading of disinformation, and there are new ways of being able to do that. It's much easier to reach huge numbers of people today than it might have been, say, 20 years ago. So if you were spreading disinformation 20, 25 years ago by walking down your local high street with a placard, then the number of people that you're likely to come into contact with that message would be relatively small. Today, you can use social media and potentially you can reach 10, 20, 100, 1,000 times as many people. And that's the difference in terms of the power of disinformation. And in terms of answering your specific question, in some ways, everything that we do, as I say, is regulated. So everything that we put to air, or all of the information that we give, has to be accurate. And part of our tradition is to not just simply accept information. We also question the people who are providing that information. So we interrogate it. So we ourselves, we make sure that that information can be trusted. And then what we do then is then we use our sort of television channel and our online channels to get that information to people. And we've seen since the beginning of this pandemic a huge increase in the number of people watching our television news output, and also reading and consuming our online news services as well. And that's not just ITV. All the news providers have seen a considerable increase in the amount of the audience and the audience's appetite for information. And I think too as well, we can also, I talked about the way that we can interrogate. Of course, we can interrogate government ministers. I mean, the Welsh government uses a press conference every day in order to get key information out there. We attend that press conference. We will ask ministers questions and so on and so forth on behalf of our audience. But the other sort of things that we can do too is we know that there's disinformation out there. We know that there are people who are sort of spreading sometimes quite dangerous statements about various sort of stages of the pandemic. I mean, at the moment the focus is on the vaccine, but at the right at the beginning is that there was even sort of people who were questioning whether or not COVID-19 was a thing, whether there was a pandemic at all, that it was some great conspiracy. And so part of our job is to also, particularly if they've got significant social media following, we will at times sort of interrogate those people and put the alternative sort of facts to them, and question why they hold those views, and really hold them to account for holding those views as well. So I think there's a number of things that we do. By law, we have to provide accurate information. Part of it is about us asking the right questions of the right people at the right time. And we've also got to be very aware of the sort of the cycle of the story as well, in terms of, the pandemic. We've been covering this now story for about a year. And at the moment, it's about the vaccination program. And as the previous speaker has just said, in the UK and in Wales, it's been a huge success story. It has. But then within that, there are sort of aspects that deserve kind of questioning. And again, the previous speaker sort of alluded to it in terms of that there's something like 15% sort of drop off for Black, Asian, minority ethnic communities. And part of our job is to ask questions about why that is, and to make sure that we're also covering stories about that and bringing that to our audience's attention too. And similarly, as the previous speaker said as well, we can create content that is accessible. So increasingly, we've been doing sort of public service information about the vaccine in languages that we wouldn't normally do, because we hope that then that might reach audiences that we might not tend to reach as a matter of course. So we're looking to keep adapting what we're doing, in recognizing that not everybody watches our television news, not everybody consumes our online services. So we're trying to do everything we can to reach as many people as we can, because the information that we are telling people, quite literally save lives.
Thanks, Phil. Really good to know how you're mitigating the misinformation, adapting to the continuous new information that's being pushed out. We'll now welcome Priyanka Mehta. Priyanka is a journalist for the publication Asian Voice. So Priyanka, following off what Phil's just spoke about, are you able to highlight these issues further, especially within the BAME community?
So we're aware that the BAME community has been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, and there are multiple reasons, socioeconomic and health reasons, pre-existing illnesses that have resulted in what has been a disproportionate impact for the BAME members. What we at Asian Voice and through our sister publication Gujarat Samachar have essentially focused on throughout the pandemic is how do we reach out to the heart of the community. A lot of these Asian people are very old. Sometimes they are from non-English speaking backgrounds. Elderly people tend to stay isolated, alone on their own, in care homes where they don't have access to vital information which they would have otherwise had through mainstream media. So we've been kind of engaging with those members, reaching out to them, asking about their experiences, what are the problems that they have been going through, and then working alongside doctors, speaking to those clinical directors in terms of documenting what are the hindrances that they are facing at the NHS trusts and hospitals while treating COVID-19 patients. We've also campaigned with the government. They do advertorials with us in terms of providing culturally sensitive messaging, because again, there are multiple languages within the Asian community per se. So we work with the government departments in order to ensure that people who don't speak English or who are not well versed in the language are able to understand what it means to go to NHS test and trace center to get tested or to get the COVID-19 vaccine. Again, earlier Natasha highlighted that there are certain myths around getting vaccinated in terms of how the ingredients of the vaccine might be in conflict with the religious tenets and practices. So we've been engaging with government ministers, mayors, councillors. Yesterday itself, Mayor of London, or is it day before yesterday, the Mayor of London himself got vaccinated. So we've been in touch with him as well. We've been speaking to him in terms of why it is important that we get vaccinated and how it's not in conflict with our religious practices. So that's the long and short of how we've been coordinating with faith leaders, with government ministers, and other community pharmacists and doctors in terms of explaining what COVID-19 has been and how it has had various implications on the BAME community and how they can go about navigating through this pandemic. We've spoken about the health aspect. The other things that we've been doing is also, there was a time period in the initial first lockdown when a lot of these Asians were also stranded in different countries, again, in India as well. So again, we worked with the government in ensuring that there was a safe repatriation for a lot of these citizens who were stuck in India without having medical facilities or without having access to accommodation and other resources that were required. So again, that was another strand of campaigning that we've done with the BAME community. Dr. Sunil also mentioned about the mental health and aspect of COVID-19 and how there has been an increase in substance abuse. So we're noticing that alcoholism can also be is also emerging as a problem within the Asian community, and we're working on that and engaging with the BAME community members as well. So, yeah.
Thank you, Priyanka. That was good. It's interesting to know how you're engaging BAME community. We will now move on to questions which have been submitted for our medical specialists. We'll be asking questions to the panel members, one at a time initially. We have a second round. If we cannot manage to finish, the answers will be on our website, or you can contact us later. May I ask Sunil Pulapaka, please, can you join me in asking? I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Sujatha. Yeah, thank you. Right, it's really an honor, Sujatha. Thank you very much. Being a trustee of the TMR, I'm really pleased. For me, first of all, to introduce, I mean, as you mentioned, we may not be having considering the time constraints to answer all the questions.
Alexia, time 25 minutes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. As we may not be able to answer all the questions, I know we had an overwhelming questionnaire previously prior to this session. We had WhatsApp, emails. I think Sujatha has piled them up, and you have already seen Natasha pile her sort of presentation towards that. Anyway, it's my privilege and honor to introduce Dr. Akram Baig, who is a past chair of the Welsh Medical Advisory Committee, past chair of the Cardiff and Vale Health Board Local Medical Advisory Committee. Currently, I believe he's practicing as a senior medical practitioner in Cardiff, Wales. So, pardon me, I just need to paraphrase some of the questions which were posed to us. So first question to you, Dr. Baig. I'm also looking at Natasha, probably depending on both of your, looking at your presentation as well, Natasha, earlier. One of the questions we received, Dr. Baig, was, what are the chances of me getting an anaphylactic reaction? How will I be treated if I get a bad reaction with the vaccine?
You're muted. You're muted, Dr. Baig.
Dr. Baig, you're muted. And Natasha, you're muted as well, please.
As Natasha has already mentioned about the minor side effects from the vaccine, anaphylactic reactions that occur are very rare. Now, to give a perspective of how rare it is, for example, now the Pfizer vaccine, 1.9 million doses have already been given out. Out of the 1.9 million doses, there have been only 21 cases of anaphylaxis reported. Now, if you divide that further, that is 11.1 case to a million shots that have been given. If you want to go further, it is 1 per 100,000 shots. Now you compare that with the measles vaccine, which we all give to our children, everybody has received that. Now, measles vaccines, anaphylaxis is 1 case per 8,000 shots. So you can imagine the difference of 1 in 100,000 and 1 in 8,000. And when you do get it, there are doctors present at wherever the centers you are having the vaccines. And these are fully trained doctors who can deal with anaphylaxis. Treatment is very simple. If you get a reaction, you get an epinephrine or adrenaline injection, okay, straight away. A little oxygen if you're having any breathing difficulties, maybe an antihistamine or a cortisone injection if necessary to take away the inflammation of your breathing channels. And apart from that, if you are having shortness of breath, etc., a beta agonist can be used if necessary. Patients are usually, after a Pfizer or any vaccination, are monitored for about 15 minutes to 30 minutes when this anaphylaxis could take place. I've had my 2 shots, and I can say very categorically, I've had no reaction whatsoever at all. I trust that answered the question, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baig. You have anything to add, Natasha, or shall we move on to different?
No, I think that's a very excellent answer from Dr. Baig. Thank you very much. Like Dr. Baig said, there are trained medical professionals available at vaccination centres. So if it does happen, which is very rare, you will be treated appropriately.
Thank you both for your time. I might come back to you again, Dr. Baig and Natasha, in a bit, as we will move on to a second round and when we come there. Right, so I would, it's another honor now. I would like to introduce Dr. Rajiv Madula. He's currently a consultant respiratory physician, believe works in King's College Hospital, London. So, Dr. Madula, good afternoon. I just wondered, I mean, we have another question from one of the attendees. I just want to paraphrase this for your understanding. One of their questions was, what are the potential long-term health effects? You've been a respiratory physician, isn't that basically? Probably would have seen lots of COVID cases following the effects of the COVID-19 infections.
So some of my work has been more focused on those with severe COVID disease, and by severe COVID disease, I mean those that have had a high oxygen requirement, or those patients that have even ended up on ventilators due to the severity of their condition. And this relates mainly to the first wave, where we were seeing patients approximately 6 to 8 weeks after their discharge from hospital and performing both physical and mental evaluations of these patients. And what we found is that the vast majority, up to 70% of them, were still experiencing fatigue, about a third of them still having some symptoms of breathlessness, and a quarter still with symptoms of anxiety and depression. And that's rather unsurprising given that the massive insult that they've undergone, and both again physically and mentally for some patients. I mean, this is a real trauma of the condition. But you know, the vast majority do recover. That's the important thing to note. A small minority have gone on to develop what we call lung fibrosis or scarring of the lung. Fibrosis is not a new condition at all, and it can be associated with severe infections such as COVID pneumonitis. There isn't a cure for this, but again, as I said, it is a very small minority of patients that develop this. And what may be of more interest is what's termed long COVID. So our National Institute of Clinical Excellence defines that as symptoms that are persisting for 12 weeks or more from the initial COVID infection. You don't necessarily have to be swab positive to fit that category. So if that explanation, definition fits anybody out there, then they should be seeking medical support from their GP, who should be able to refer them to what we call long COVID clinics, which are presently being set up. And there they should be able to be assessed by a physician, a psychotherapist, and a physiotherapist for a wide range of constellation of symptoms that they'll suffer from. The main, again, common symptom being defined is really profound fatigue. But as I've said, you know, although we can't ignore the number of deaths that have happened due to COVID pneumonitis, it's important to say that the vast majority of people make a full and complete recovery from COVID-19.
Thank you very much, Dr. Madula. Much informative, and it's really personally reassuring as well. For example, if I endured a COVID, how do I recover? So that's really good to know that there are long COVID clinics and things have been put in place, especially in UK. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. So for in next round, I'm going to come back to you again, Dr. Madula. Please do hang on. There are loads of questions. In case if we have, we might email you as well or put it on the PMR website. Right. It's my privilege now to introduce Dr. Janaba Suari. I'm sorry if I massacred your last name, Dr. Janaba. She is a medical advisor from Guinea, Conakry, West Africa. My question to you, doctors, have I pronounced your last name right? So Suari?
Yes, Suari, Dr. Suari.
Thank you, Dr. Suari. Right. So how is the current circumstance of COVID-19 at the moment in Guinea? And I'll summate the question basically. What's the vaccine situation, if you are aware, and does everybody have to pay? Sorry, there are 3 forms for this question.
I mean, here in Guinea, but the COVID, we did not receive a vaccine yet. They did not start a vaccine yet.
Oh, okay.
So for a moment, it's like, we have another kind of problem that just came out right now. So we have Ebola coming back. So yes, Ebola is coming back, and in this moment we are more worried about that. And the vaccine of Ebola is just coming now. They are saying from gonna get the vaccine from Ebola first, and COVID vaccine here in Guinea.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Suari. I mean, probably we had a tiny breakups there. I think Dr. Suari were mentioning, unfortunately, I think Ebola is coming back. Is that right, Dr. Suari, if I heard you right?
Yes.
So you are fighting a double whammy at the moment. I'm really I'm really surprised, actually. Oh my God. So anyway, we can only cross our fingers, and I bet your government is doing everything. Right. So it's unfortunate really to listen to you that you haven't got vaccination started yet at the moment for COVID. Hopefully things might start putting in place.
Okay. Yes, the vaccine is coming. They are saying that we're going to receive a vaccine soon, but the priority right now is we have a both side, the both illness right now, epidemic here, the Ebola and a COVID. But as the COVID, we still, we are handling it, but no vaccine yet. The treatment is going well. There is not too much death as in Europe or in America. And but as Ebola, before we get Ebola was very catastrophic in West Africa. So this moment right now, this is the things that we are taking care of it. And the government is doing good job. They are trying to handle the both sides. But now the priority exactly is to Ebola again, to know how we're gonna handle it. And the COVID right now is just a test, when you're traveling, you have to make a test to be negative to go to another country, is vice versa. But as I did not hear yet that the vaccine starts in Guinea.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Suari.
We don't have a vaccine yet.
Thank you very much for your time. I hope things will be coming in place eventually. Right. Okay. Now, I have an honor to introduce our colleagues from the West now. First is Dr. Madusha Mittanagi. She's an MD and lead medical advisor for Northwell Health in New York, apparently. Dr. Mittanagi.
Sorry, Sunil, she's not there. Shall we go to the next?
Thank you. Thanks, Sujatha. Right. Okay, can I have a privilege to introduce Dr. Tahia Farouk, who currently lives in Los Angeles, California, in the sunny part of the world. Is that right, Tahia? I think Tahia has an experience of 4.5 years experience in healthcare management company, I believe in West Coast of USA. Right, Tahia. I mean, I know we have heard from Dr. ALN Rao, and we really envy you guys living in a sunny part of the world. Basically, but I just want to you to give an insight to all of us, basically, when compared to the east of your country to the west, how are things at the moment in terms of vaccination, in terms of the cases? Could you throw some light on it, please?
Yes, so I live in California. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this wonderful event. And I live in California. Currently, I am visiting in Bangladesh. So if I talk about California, the vaccination there began on December 14th, 2020. And then we started off with the Pfizer vaccines, and then later it was followed by Moderna vaccines. Currently, as of yesterday, my data, California has vaccinated over 6.7 million people, which the state was a little bit criticized because the numbers are low for vaccination. But currently the state government has picked it up, and they are vaccinating 1 million per week. Also, they are vaccinating in phases. So they are in phase 1B now. Phase 1A was just frontline healthcare workers and residents of long-term facilities. Now they're vaccinating people over 65 with pre-existing conditions, and recipients from ambulance services and child healthcare, and all that. So that is we're still in the first phase. I actually tried registering for the vaccine. Currently, it's not my turn yet, but they are still urging people to register online or via a toll-free number. And then they will send you a text with all the information, like when it's your turn to get the vaccine. And the state actually plans to vaccinate most of the Californians by summer 2021.
Right. Thank you very much, Tahia. I know you mentioned you're residing in Bangladesh at the moment. Could you just throw some light where you're living as well at the moment, please, just to guess?
Yes. So I'm not going to get into the COVID numbers, even though, for a third world country like Bangladesh, is a tiny third world country, the numbers are pretty low. We have only about 8,300 deaths in the pandemic and about 543,000 cases. Vaccination for us began on January 27th. We are receiving our vaccinations from the Serum Institute of India. And we received about 7 million. We are we plan on receiving 27 million more. And we're getting the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. Right now, there's a lot of skepticism over the safety margins of the vaccine, so not a lot of registrations yet. The government is doing their best to educate and create awareness on the people. And also, my parents and my in-laws all took the first dose. They're feeling great, no side effects yet. And, the registration process is pretty simple. It's all online, and the government plans on vaccinating all their 170 million Bangladeshi citizens. It will take time, but slowly but surely, hopefully the country will get there.
Thank you very much, Tahia. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Right. So I would like to pose a question for Dr. Rao. I would want to paraphrase this question. It's almost a half a page question, really, Dr. Rao, but I just want to propose it to you, basically. As you mentioned, the immune system, different formats of every individual presenting isn't different, reacting to virus, basically. So one of the questions we received is, in people's interest and quest for more natural ways of living, for example, eating well, yoga, plant-based remedies, and the vaccination, which is more of a synthetic, unnatural, ethically and socially, and it is attacking on the freedoms. Well, probably as you are from the country which we all know, basically, which they thought about the freedom and rights stuff. So what would your path or what would you advise in terms of vaccination, basically, about when it comes to the BAME community? was one of the questions.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you for the question and appreciate it. Yeah, to start with, every person is different at the immunity level. Okay, some people have excellent immunity and they may not be doing anything, but inherently they are, because of their genetic makeup. And probably you heard that in India, the death rates are low. Okay, I think one of the reasons why in India the death rates are low, because Indians inherently have a much better immune system compared to the Western world. Because here the conditions are so clean, okay, so you are basically in a bubble. Whereas in India, you're exposed to constantly a lot of diseases. Okay, that's why you have a lot of immunity developed. That's probably one of the reasons why the death rates are low. Okay, that's very important. And during the pandemic, I heard that in India, people got the BCG vaccination. They can get protected against COVID. I don't know how far it is true, but that's what I heard. Okay, that's one. So now with regard to these habits, like yoga, practice and all for immunity. So, I mean, of course, in COVID, you have to keep yourself active because, of course, weather permitting in California, we have no problem because every day I go for 5-mile walk for me, okay, because morning and evenings. But that's one of the things, the key things to keep yourself healthy is to do a regular exercise. And of course, like any other, watch what you eat. And to boost the immunity level, one of the things is to take vitamin C. Okay, as a doctor, you know it. So like you can eat oranges or avocados, which is an excellent source of vitamin C and a good fat, not a bad fat, good fat. So like this, okay, those are the things you can do to boost your immunity. But no matter what, how your immune levels are, you cannot relax with COVID. You got to wear a mask, you got to exercise, social distancing, okay? Don't take it for granted. Okay, my immunity level is good. COVID is not going to do anything to me. Because I've seen a lot of people here, especially young people, saying that I'm young, so the COVID is not going to do anything to me. And within a week, they end up in ICU with ventilator. Okay, so COVID is not going to spare anybody. It doesn't discriminate. Okay, that's true with any virus, not only COVID, any virus. But at least this one, at least follow all the guidelines suggested by the health officials. Okay, that's all I can suggest.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Rao. Much appreciated, actually. Yeah, I mean, I have a couple more questions for Dr. Baig, actually, if he's still around. Dr. Baig, I wonder if I could pose this question to yourselves. Primarily, I think in terms of, I mean, as a primary care physician, in terms of the prevention schedule, basically, why is it recommended to wash hands with soap and water? There is one of the questions. I know 1 year later this question has been posed, but I just wanted to clarify from your view, please. You are on mute, Dr. Baig.
You guys keep muting me. It's very simple. If you look at the constitution of soap, soap has hybrid molecules. And those molecules are just like a tadpole with a head and a tail. The head is hydrophilic, which likes water. The tail is hydrophobic, runs away from water. So the reason why we ask people to wash their hands is when you wash the hands with the soap and when water touches it, the tail tries to run away from the water and goes and attacks the lipid membrane or the cell membrane, which is made out of lipid of the virus, thus penetrating into the virus and prizing it open, thus killing the virus there and then. That's why we say, wash your hands with soap and water for 20 seconds. Wash them thoroughly. Make sure you wash them properly, 20 seconds minimum. And if you do that, the virus will be killed by the tails of the soap, the molecules.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baig. I'm going to keep washing now. Over the last 1 year, that's what I've been doing. I appreciate that, actually. Right. So I'm just gonna. I think you need to still hang on, Dr. Baig. You have lots of questions. I think probably might have to start emailing you. This question I would want to pose it to Dr. Madula, if it's still around. Dr. Madula, we have an interesting question. I think probably you might have seen in the last 1 year or so, being a respiratory physician, there might be cancer patients, lung cancer, low immune patients presenting with COVID-related sort of symptoms. One question is, what is, I know, prognostically, or again, you mentioned the long COVID and stuff like that, but that is one thing. And will these people be, according to your experience, be advised to take vaccine and stuff? Could you kindly clarify more on that? This is a paraphrase of somebody else's question, sorry, so that's what I was just
Of course, no, we would still recommend that people, such as you described, with lung cancer, or even with background of reduced immunity, take the COVID vaccination. Their increased risk of developing COVID-19, and particularly the severe effects of COVID-19, and vaccine would hopefully be a way of providing them with the adequate protection. In terms of any experience I have, well, look, we have patients that are transplant patients. We have patients with a variety of immunology compromised. Those, for example, on biologic therapies as well, rheumatoid arthritis and such. And all these patients, we would still advocate that they take the vaccine to give them the adequate protection that they require.
Okay.
The benefits outweigh the risks.
Thank you very much. Right. So I'm going to go back to Dr. Baig. This is the last question. I know you might have a lot of other questions, audience. Please do post them, put them on our chat box. We will pass it on to the panel, and we'll get answers, which will be published on the TMR website, which eventually Sujatha will discuss before we finish anyway. Right. So the last question for Dr. Baig. Right. If I may ask, basically, Dr. Baig, there is again, I mean, I think a lot of discrepancy in terms of religious issues. I know there is not much of injunctions, basically, but what are the constituents of this vaccine, Dr. Baig? Clarify a bit on that.
Sorry, I didn't hear that question.
I mean, I know there are not any injunctions with religion, religious factors and stuff like that. But I wanted to paraphrase this question, put it down. What are the constituents of this vaccine? What are the things in the vaccine? I know Natasha has thrown some light on it, but would I be able to clarify that, please?
Yes. Usually, if you look at it, the development of any vaccine is an antigen, an adjuvant, a preservative, and a stabilizer. Okay, that's how vaccines are made. But in cases of Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca, there are no preservatives in there. So there is no preservatives for religious purposes or anybody else, any religion, Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, Jews. There is no religious item in there for them to say, no, I cannot take it. It is halal. I will repeat that word, halal, for the Muslims and for everybody else, all the religious denomination, etc. It is free of anything that would be contrary to your beliefs. Okay, and I trust that answers the question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baig. I mean, if we have a time, we will keep on sitting whole through this evening. Probably I'll have my own wine next to me and sit with you, basically. The resilience of questions for you. But we'll put it on the chat box for you so that you'll be in a position to answer them.
Sure.
Right. I'll pass it on to Sujatha now. So if I can, I'll leave it for her to wrap up this session.
Thank you.
Sujatha, your chance, please, now.
Thank you all for joining and taking part in this event, particularly the guest speakers and panelists. We would also like to give a big thanks to the mentoring team, especially Kiran from England, who has helped us to coordinate this event, and everybody in the TMR staff members and volunteers. If you have found our mentoring charity or today's event insightful and would like to support the work of our charity, we have left a link here for you to donate, or you can give any feedback about us. I don't know whether Sangeeta is ready with the fill-in of the poll on the screens, please. As you keep doing it, let me just say something. Keep your eyes peeled for our future events with the mentoring. We hope you all have a lovely rest of your day and look forward to speaking to you soon. Stay safe and let's all work together to end the pandemic. Thank you all. Here is the poll. If you can tell us where you're from, that would be great. Thank you.
Sujatha, I just lost it. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, did you like the event? That says so. If you want to. Another, have you all answered? Thank you. Are we sharing?
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. It's so encouraging that all of you have enjoyed, and it's so lovely to see. This is the first time we have done a Q&A panel session and everything all by ourselves. We always did work with other charities like Diabetes UK. I don't know if Sean is there, and other organizations like IST. I don't know, Rahila, is she there? And various other organizations. But this is one that we have done it in partnership with Public Health Wales as well. So thank you very much. And keep an eye. We may be coming back on the 11th of March, another session a year on pandemic. So we will invite you. If you're interested, you can get back to us and we will send you the link for participation. It will be on a weekday. I think it's on 11th. It's a weekday, so it will be late in the evening after your work. We won't disturb you when you're working. So thank you again, everybody. And this is our last, I think, our last question.
Okay. So is that are we done, Sujatha, or are you still waiting for the polling results and stuff?
No, I think polling questions are finished.
Yeah, this is the last one. Yeah.
Just the last
yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Is that Jasmine?
Was it me saying something? Sorry, it was sorry, Rahila. Sorry.
Oh.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks
and
for your answers.
Good rest of the day then. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Lovely to see you, Sujatha. Speak to you soon as well. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Rao. Thank you, Dr. Madula.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Baig. Yeah.
And thank you, Sujatha, for having such a lovely event. Very informative and very, very useful. Thank you very much again. And
thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, Natasha, for answering my question on
Thank you, Sujatha ji. Jasmine, are you happy with the answers that you received from the panel?
Yes, very happy and pleased to know that I can take the vaccination easily. I'm still wondering why they put it on that paper which goes with the vaccine. Such a wrong in terms of frightening people who are taking the vaccine, you know.
We will take it back to Public Health Wales or something, if your feedback, is that okay?
Definitely, they shouldn't put that because they've said don't take it if you are on anticoagulants. And it's not the fact that you're on anticoagulants, it's just that you have, like Natasha said, you just have to, you know, see that you're not bleeding, that's all, you know, because you'll be more prone to bleeding, but you wouldn't be, you know, you can do other things, but not, it's not a negative answer that you can't take it, you know, because we need the vaccination. That's what I mean. We all need the vaccination, definitely.